Welcome to Legalized Negligence. Tonight I'm on my own. Travis and Sabrina are tied up with other things, but that's okay. I'm going to take a little departure tonight from what we normally do, where we talk about Florida Statute 768.21, subsection 8. And I want to address some misinformation that I've been seeing on various groups and in news stories. Let me start off by saying I'm not an attorney, so nothing I say can be construed as legal advice. I'm just a guy who reads. I read the law a lot, have been doing that for 30 years. And I'm a real stickler for language and getting our words right. Uh, if you think about when you go to your delegation meetings in the fall, or when the legislature goes into session once the new year begins, if you can't use the right language when you speak to them, there's no way that you can convey the remedy that you're looking for when you talk to them about a particular problem. And what I want to address tonight is the term the Wrongful Death Act. I have been seeing an increasing number of people citing the statute 768.21 subsection 8 and calling it the Wrongful Death Act. It's not the Wrongful Death Act. It is a very small portion of the Wrongful Death Act. In fact, it is only 38 words of a much larger section of law. And when that information, and I'm going to call it disinformation, starts getting spread, which it has been, then pretty soon people who are new to this um, start using the wrong language. And once that happens, it just keeps going and going. So I would like to back up and let's go to the very beginning and discuss this issue. I'm going to share a screen right now, and this is going to be it'll pop up here in just a minute. This is the 2023 Florida statutes. And they start off with a title, and then they go from title to chapter, from chapter to section, from section to subsection. And think of it kind of like your address on an envelope. You can't just write your name, you got to narrow it down further than that. So you give your street address. Okay, well, which street, where is that located? And then you have to give the town, and then you need to narrow that down even further. So you have to give the state, and then you narrow that down even further to a zip code. Well, that's similar to what when they write statutes, when legislatures write statutes for states, they start off with title, and then they go to chapter, and then they go to section, and then they go to subsection. So here we start off with the titles, and they title them with Roman numerals. So, Title 1 talks about the construction of statutes, and you go on down the list here, and you have a section on the legislative branch, the executive branch, judicial branch. You keep going down, and you have things like motor vehicles and aviation, and keep going, and you have laws on alcoholic beverages and tobacco, and just on and on and on and on. And finally, we get to Title XLV, which for those uh, who weren't educated back when I was, that's Roman numerals. It stands for 45. So in Title 45, which covers torts. Now, what is a tort? Well, let's see what Cornell Law School has to say about a tort. A tort is an act or omission that gives rise to injury or harm to another and amounts to a civil wrong for which courts impose a liability. So the simple answer to that question is a tort is an injury that causes harm. So we will back up again here to our statutes, and we're going to look under torts, because when a doctor or nurse commits medical malpractice, that causes an injury which causes harm. So let's see what we find under torts. Now we want to go to chapter 768. So we look up here under chapter 768, and that defines negligence. It talks about negligence. Now, there's a lot above that. Under Title XLV, you have medical malpractice and related matters. And there's, when you get on down past 768, you have hazardous occupations, defamations. All of these are torts, and they run all the way through chapter 766 to 774. That's the last one under torts, which happens to be asbestos related claims. But we'll get back up to 768. So we're under Title XLV, Chapter 768, and we'll look at that. Now we want to go to section 0.21. That's the section we want to get to. So I'm going to open up the entire chapter, and you can see it starts off with 768.041, and it just goes on down the line. And I'm going to scroll down real quickly to bypass all this stuff that we don't want to read about. And we're going to get to 768. It's 1.3, still in 1.3. Okay, we're at 2.9, so let's back up to 2.1. Went a little too far there. You can see there's a lot that's covered by this. 768.22, and now we are at 768.21. So we're under torts, we're under negligence, which is 768, and the 2.1 is damages. Okay, now that you have that background, and eventually under 0.21, section 2.1, we have subsection 8, which I'll go ahead and highlight it. I don't know if those who watch us on their phone, if they'll be able to see it, but I'll go ahead and highlight. This is the part that we're interested in, because this is the part that prevents us from being able to recover damages, which keeps attorneys from wanting to take our cases, no matter how valid the case is. If you can't recover damages, you can't pay your attorney. So attorneys turn the cases down because there's no way for them to make any money. And you can't knock them for that, because that's how they earn their living. But now I want to go to a post that I read, and this is what brought this whole thing on. I'm not going to use this person's name. In fact, I'm not going to read the whole thing because I don't want to embarrass them. But this person said, hopefully we can get a full repeal of the Wrongful Death Act statute here once and for all. Well, I think they misspoke. Now, the reason I say that is I'm going to go back up here to 768.16. And I'll read that to you. Let me highlight it. So, chapter 768.16 is called the Wrongful Death Act. It runs from 768.16 all the way through 768.26. And it may be cited as the Florida Wrongful Death Act. So when this person says that maybe we can get a full repeal of the Wrongful Death Act statute, I don't think they know what they're talking about, because we don't want the legislature to repeal the entire Wrongful Death Act. We want them to simply repeal a very small section of it. I copied the entire Wrongful Death Act and I pasted it into Word. There happens to be 1,355 words in the entire act, and we're only talking about 38 of those words that we believe are unjust. And Senator Yarborough believes that it's unjust as well. So some of the things that fall under the Wrongful Death Act that we don't want repealed is the legislative intent. We don't want the definitions repealed. We don't want the right of action that tells who has a right of action. We don't want that repealed. We don't want the part that defines who the parties can be repealed. We don't even want the part that defines damages repealed. We simply want subsection 8, and I'll go ahead and highlight it and read it. I know that most people who watch this video already knows what it says. Subsection 8 reads, the damages specified in subsection 3 shall not be recoverable by adult children, and the damages specified in subsection 4 shall not be recoverable by parents of an adult child with respect to claims for medical negligence. So I can go up here to subsections 3 and 4, and this is them right here. And basically, it's saying what is recoverable. And what subsection 8 does is says that if you are over the age of 25 or you're not married, then at the time of death, then you can't recover the things that everybody else in the state of Florida can recover um, when it comes to medical malpractice. But why is it so important that I point this out? Well, words are the handles that we use to convey thoughts. And if we're not using the right handles, then we're not going to convey those thoughts to our legislators. And I'm seeing more and more of this. It happens all the time. And it seems like I've been at this for 3.5 years now. My mom died 3.5 years ago. And that's when I started getting into learning about subsection 8. And it seems like with every year that goes by, more and more people are using the wrong language when they talk about this. I see them refer to doctors as murderers. Um, uh, if you have to look under the statutes and find the definition of murder, and I think it's wrong to call them murderers. Yeah, I think that they were certainly negligent, and their negligence led to a death. But that's a whole lot different than intentionally aiming a gun at somebody and shooting them. So if we don't get our words correct when we talk to legislators, they're not going to listen to what we're saying. It just makes us appear uneducated. It makes it where the point that we're trying to make is falling on deaf ears because a lot of people are using hyperbole, and they're just it's almost like screaming. It's like you're not going to get anybody to listen to you if you're just screaming at them all the time. If you can talk to them in a civil tone, present your case with the right terminology, understand your material, you stand a much better chance for them to listen to you and understand your point. So you got a good point. And in fact, I've been able to do that with Senator Yarborough. I've sent him correspondence over the past few months, and he would write me back and would say, "You've got a very good point there. We need to address that. We need to change the language. We need to do this or we need to do that." And it's because I use the right words. And learning the legal language is very much like learning another language. There are words that we don't use in our common everyday conversation with people. There's a lot of words that have meanings that you don't think that. I mean, it means one thing when you're just having, an informal conversation with someone, but when you put it into a legal document, it could mean something completely different than that. So I wanted to point that out, that if you're going to talk about Florida statute 768.21 subsection 8, make sure that you know that that is not the Wrongful Death Act. The Wrongful Death Act is much larger than that. It encompasses a great deal more than that. So I hope to do several more of these videos over the next few days where I just address one small point and keep it between 10 and 15 minutes where people's attention span can stick with it that long. At the moment, it seems that Senator Yarborough's bill, SB 248, seems to be stalled. We can't find out anything about it. And they're getting very close to running out of time before they go out of session. So I thought during this time that we're just treading water, I would cover some of these topics, and maybe people will get interested in doing some research on their own and learning how to speak better when we talk to them, because I'm getting a sinking feeling that we're going to be at this again next year. So thank you for joining me. I'll go ahead and stop sharing the screen, and I will end this recording. I'm going to try to do a podcast with Sabrina tomorrow. She sent me a bill analysis tonight of a House bill that I found very interesting, but I'm not going to give that away until I can get her in with me to talk about it. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again.